we shadows have offended? Think but this, and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here, whilst these visions did appear.
When you hear a pin drop during a performance, you know the audience is really captured and you've got their attention, and that is success to me. My work tends to be visually quite bold, a little visually arresting without taking away from the rest of the storytelling that happens on stage. I'm a storyteller and I create imagery, and I specialize in creating experiences where people have an emotional connection to what they're experiencing and making them feel present in the space and feel connected to the story.
Described as dazzling by the New York Times, his work has received nominations for the Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Projection Design and the Tony Award for Best Scenic Design in a Musical. His stagecraft is creating scenic imagery through light and projection. His gripping theatrical worlds have enthralled audiences from Europe to the US. Join me, Nelda, as I experience the artistry of projection designer Sven Ortel. A native of Cologne, Germany, Sven Ortel grew up along with the field of projection design and digital imaging. When he started as a part-time lighting tech in nightclubs, projection imagery and digital technology were in their infancy. Fast forward to today, and the technologies have grown to allow for an exploding array of uses, from integrated live theatrical productions to immersive art installations using projection mapping. Digital and projection imagery can be seen everywhere, from billboards to restaurants. His designs go beyond just imagery. He is the architect of the projection system, the artwork, video, as well as integration with sets, costumes, lighting, and sound.
A visual storyteller in the performing arts has to integrate their work into all the other design components. It always has to be in conversation with lighting, scenery, costume, sound, and there is a purpose. And that purpose takes into account the context in which it is being presented, and in a way the audience puts it all together into one big composition that is meaningful to them. So I contribute a component to the visual storytelling. The artwork that I do create is very specific to the show, and I try to invent a visual story, a visual world for each of the shows that I work on. So everything is very unique and bespoke. Imagery can be light, it can add texture, it can just be mood or add emotion, but it can also provide location, for example, so it tells audiences where they are or when something is taking place. The location may stay the same, but there are different times of day. It may also be used for effects like lightning, storms, or going down a wormhole, going up and down elevators, visual pizzazz, distraction. So it can have all these different purposes, and I really enjoy that, and I dissect the script and in conversation with the rest of the creative team decide what imagery can contribute to this moment and then decide whether that is the right tool to use here. Imagery is relatively awkward to talk about in a way that is persuasive. You almost have to kind of show it. You get very visceral reactions.
A visceral reaction from audiences is something Sven is always chasing. The classic 1938 romantic thriller Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier has been adapted many times on screen, and the live musical version presented exciting moments to enhance with Sven's imagery and projection. One example, the balcony scene. Sven's images of menacing, moving ivy sweeping over Manderley had an immediate impact.
So it's a very sad and dramatic scene, and the music swells, and with the music swelling, all the ivy is projected onto fake ivy, and it starts moving, and it's huge. It's like a 60 by 40 feet proscenium, and this whole ivy wall sweeps around the stage with the music swelling, and the ivy starts moving, and it's blue as well, which is weird, but the audience would always just stop what they're doing and just sort of, you can hear them gasping. And that was always very touching and moving for me. And there's lots of little moments like that, dramatic special effects moments that are really hard or very expensive to do with physical scenery. And I created this elaborate fire sequence that is combined with real flames. There were a lot of real flames everywhere, burning pieces falling down or getting flung towards the audience. And I could see people sort of ducking, and sort of trying to avoid getting hit by, a piece of burning timber. And that was very satisfying to me.
One of his most recent productions involves using projections in a less physical but equally impactful way in the original new play, Thoughts of a Colored Man. A billboard looms large on stage to inject its words into the narrative.
It's more than just location or scenery. A lot of times it's mood or things that you can't quite put your finger on. It adds to the rhythm and to the feeling of the overall show and the tone of it. It's a really poetic show that is really touching, and it's about men talking about what they struggle with, apart from gentrification and race, just also all the things that they struggle with.
Since I couldn't experience Sven's work firsthand, he invited me to Win Reality, an XR studio in Austin, Texas, to get an up-close and detailed view of his projection art and imagery.
How are you?
Nice to meet you, Sven. I tell you what, I've stepped into your world, haven't I?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming into this little XR set.
It is very great.
Yeah, but what it actually allows us to do is allows us to go to different places and still relate to everything that surrounds us as if it was really there. We can turn this green screen into any location, also locations that you physically can actually go to. Like, could be on Mars, could be on the space station, could be on the Colorado River. But right now we're in a theater, but we can also actually go into the gallery and look at the work that I've done in the past or work that I may do in the future, and take an in-depth look at some of the artwork, get really close up. So I need you to just follow me over there.
Short walk.
Very short walk. Yeah, and slightly different angle.
All right.
All right, let's walk over here. Here we are. Well, it's transforming as we speak. So now, here we are in a gallery space.
Unreal Engine, the advanced 3D real-time software originally designed for gaming, is now used in many areas, including the film industry. Today, Win Reality used Unreal Engine to transport me to a gallery showing of Sven's work. With monitors to show me where we are and what we're looking at, I was able to take a very unique tour.
What do you see?
It's like the elongation of the body itself coming out of almost a synapses, to me, like something of a nerve of the body.
That's beautiful. That's what we're trying to do in theater stuff. We try to sort of tap into the audience's imagination and hope that they take away what we like them to see, or they have that mental image and that emotional reaction that you just had when you looked at that. But Julie explained this moment to me, where Puck comes through the treetops and lands on stage. And we tried for a long time to get that right, because it's supposed to be effortless and beautiful. But when you're sending an actor head first through a giant piece of fabric, and then the imagery is supposed to kind of emanate from that body.
Yeah.
So all these pieces.
All the layers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of the joy of live theater, that it's live, it's unique, it's different, slightly different every night.
Every night.
And you're witnessing that sort of elusive quality as an audience member.
Working with celebrated director Julie Taymor was a dynamic and creative collaboration for Sven.
Julie Taymor is known to have these incredible visual ideas and storytelling ideas. It was certainly a show where I had a lot of liberty to be bolder than on other shows, just because it relied so much on imagery. It was essentially a dark space, and was designed to be a dark space where dreams could come to life. So there were very few surfaces that were apparent, one of which was this canopy, which is a giant piece of silk that would float down from the ceiling onto the floor. And there were a couple of other silks that were reminiscent of bed sheets that I was projecting on. It was probably at the time, the most challenging project I ever worked in. And that was for the entrance of the fairies into the theater, and they were projected onto silk that school children were waving. A high-speed photographer filmed them, and I basically assembled them to make this texture. It was a mixture of physical motion and projected imagery. Projection is light, so it's ethereal. So it can be quite magical, because it's only there when it hits a surface. Otherwise it just goes straight through. Unless there's fog or silk, it's not really there. So it fit that moment really well.
Beautifully done.
This moment, there's a what could be a sex scene, and she was really interested in being ambiguous about it. So we talked about these flowers growing really fast and this flower explosion, and she sent me a picture of this hibiscus flower, and she's like, let's start there. So I started experimenting with hibiscus flowers. So that's how this started, and it's supposed to be magical and otherworldly, so I had to make it look like a very strange, very big, very sexy hibiscus flower. So I just had to add bits and pieces.
Beautiful.
Yeah. This is the printing sequence, which we recreated as an homage to the movie sequence. We went actually to a letterpress in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and this plate that you see is something that was designed by my design team. And then we actually printed these leaflets with it in this letterpress using a very old printing process. And my whole team went there, and we filmed basically the printing of this flyer that's used in the show, that then makes an appearance a second later. It was a really fun sequence to make and to create. And then, of course, it gets projected. It's going to be shown on stage, on architecture, together with other people, so it's about getting the proportions right. In this case, the color coordination was really important. You see sort of these inky greens and inky blues, so that was something that's really important for the lighting designers, the set designer, costume designer, and myself, to again make this really cohesive. This is one of the textures that I made for the show. I recreated it for you today. So it has newspapers in it, it has the oldie downtown, Lower East Side, New York in it, and what was the Pulitzer building, which doesn't exist anymore. So that was really important for the show. And it has some movement in it. Projection cannot replace the beauty and the craftsmanship of a traditional backdrop, but what it can add is like a quick change or movement. I'm always a proponent of having projection do something that traditional theater crafts cannot do. So in this case, I just put clouds in it. It was relatively subtle, because if something is that large, it takes up 40 feet. of width. It can be very distracting, so you have to get the speed just right and the size of the movement just right. So it's very subtle. It's just enough for it to be alive, but not distracting.
Beautiful.
And that's that's Pulitzer's office. And
the reds pop. Look at that.
yeah, they do. Again, it's like you can adjust colors in real time, and we adjusted the windows to have a relationship with the performers. It's not enough for me to create a beautiful image. It has to fit with the furniture, with the people, and the colors of projection has to make the costumes pop a lot. I have to be quite respectful and not try to replace an art or a craft that is well established and does a beautiful work at doing this. So again, it's use projection for something that these other crafts or design techniques cannot do. And in this case, it has to do with the fact that these images have to disappear really quickly. It's a very tightly choreographed musical, and when these screens roll up, the imagery rolls up with them. When they come back down, there's a new image on it. And you can't do that with the traditional backdrop. Maybe Happy Ending, which is a musical about helperbots. Helperbots are something in the future. These two helper robots, despite the fact that they've been programmed to not fall in love, they do fall in love with one another. The proscenium is taken up by a building that is inhabited by other helperbots. So what we created was an image of the building itself that we can take through different times of day and different types of weather. So we can completely transform it. There's also a moment where we actually zoom into the building, which is quite stunning because of the scale when you sit in the theater. Like, it's one thing to sit in front of a small screen and zoom in. It's another when you're sitting in front of something that is 40 feet wide and 20 feet tall, and that kind of scales up, or you move into a window. Then what we put people into these rooms. So we filmed a lot. We also put the entire band into that fake proscenium, which was playing in sync with the real musicians. I had a student who was very keen on exploring how game engine technology could be used in a theatrical environment. He helped and created this journey through downtown in Unity. People loved it, and it was much bigger than either of us had thought. It sounds really futuristic, but what's interesting about it is that looking at these robots allows us to reflect on us as humans and what love means and the human condition. And, you know, for me as a theater designer, what's really exciting is that reflecting on the human condition is really essentially what theater is all about.
Beyond live theater, Sven has designed projected imagery for immersive experiences through Architect House, and even an educational immersive exhibit to amplify the growing issue of space debris.
There are a lot of immersive experiences now that create environments where everything that surrounds the audiences is projected in some shape or form. Projection design is really good at surrounding us in a physical space. So anywhere where there is a physical space and you can have imagery, projection designers, or people that in theater called projection designers, they might be called something else in other areas of work, then there's a story to be told with imagery and sound. It's really an expression of the camaraderie and bonding that happens at a bar. So, and by extension, it's an expression of the community aspect that we have missed because we're all living in isolation at the time, and it's connecting the past with the future. That was a really other important aspect of it, because we are very cognizant of that. There have been crises in this country before, and this painting was painted at the end of the Second World War, where people were very anxious, and we wanted to create a connection between that time and the current time and look towards the future. And it engages with the people that are standing in the space. So it's alive and it's positive, and it connects people with art. Eyes in the Sky is a project that is inspired by the research of Professor Morabajah at UT Austin, and he's done a lot of research for years about the challenges that space debris poses. The problem is getting worse because we're sending a lot of satellites into space and it's basically unregulated at this stage. I care about the environment and I care about the Earth, and I always feel myself being a steward of the environment, so that there is something that resonated with me, and it was something that was interesting to me as a design challenge, because it's so abstract, it's so far away that it's really hard to have an emotional connection with the problem, which is perfect for a designer. In order to do that, I felt it was necessary to create an environment where people believably feel they are in a place where that problem exists. So they could be on the International Space Station and to a sufficient degree believe they're there, that they can tune out the fact that they're actually not there. That's sort of the trick with a lot of this technology. There needs to be enough there for you to suspend belief and to feel present. So the holy grail of mixed reality or virtual reality is present, meaning that there's lots of tricks that you can use as a designer or technologist to make people believe they're there, and that has always been fascinating to me.
So what's next for Sven? Once Upon a One More Time, a jukebox musical featuring the music of Britney Spears, passing on his knowledge to the next generation as a professor at the University of Texas, and of course, chasing that North Star, keeping audiences on the edge of their seat.